Me and my friend Daniel have known each other since we were kids. Our dads were close before we even really knew what that meant. Same job back in the day, always at each other's houses, always doing something. Barbecues, games on TV, late nights where we just stayed up while the adults were talking and hoped they didn't notice. It never felt like just family friends, it was more like we just grew up in the same orbit. Camping was a big part of this. Every summer, no matter what, both families would go somewhere. Lake, woods, some random campground a few hours out. It was just expected. Our dads were big on it. They said it made us men. Said it was important to know how to be out there without relying on anything. They had rules too, normal stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary. Stay close, don't wander, don't talk to people you don't know. If you hear something outside the tent, don't go looking for it. At the time, it didn't matter. Now it does. We were 28 and 29 when this happened. I'm 37 now. Daniel picked me up early on a morning during the summer of 2017. We lived in Indiana. We were both off from work at the time, being teachers. It was always nice having summers off. He picked me up in his 2008 Honda CRV. Nothing special, but it got us where we needed to go. The campsite he picked was new, said he found it online. Not many people went there, and that was enough for us. We liked the more quiet side of camping anyway. The drive was normal, talking, music, nothing out of the ordinary. Then the roads narrowed, fewer cars, more trees. You know, the feeling when you realize you haven't seen another person in a while. That was it. At one point, I saw a wooden sign on the side of the road with the campsite name on it. Faded, old, then we passed it again. Same sign, same spot. The letters were so faded that you could barely tell what it said. I pointed it out. Daniel didn't respond. He just shrugged. We kept driving. By the time we got there, the sun was low. 3 rangers stood near the entrance. One older man, serious, did most of the talking. He didn't waste time. First time here, fellas? Daniel nodded in agreement. The ranger gave us a quick nod back and started listing the rules. Stay within your designated campsite. No fires outside the marked areas. Keep your food sealed. No loud noises after dark. Don't wander the grounds at night unless absolutely necessary. Then his tone shifted. If you see any wildlife at all, don't approach it. He paused. If you see anyone you don't recognize, don't approach them. Don't invite anyone back to your campsite. And most importantly, keep to yourselves. Then took a slight pause, caught his breath, and said, if someone comes near your tent at night, don't respond. Don't leave your tent to check anything you hear. If you hear something calling your name, ignore it. Me and Daniel started to laugh, not taking any words this ranger was saying seriously. Besides, we weren't rookies when it came to camping. We've been doing it for years, since we were young. After we composed ourselves, the ranger still had the serious look on his face that he had had before we started laughing. Nothing but that serious look. He seemed kind of annoyed. We were waiting for him to say something, but no words came out of his mouth. Just that look, a blank expression. We got back in the car and drove into the campsite. After taking a second to realize what had happened during that interaction, I tried to discuss with Daniel. I asked him if any of the rules seemed weird to him, and whether or not he thought the guy was joking. He said relax. People like to over-exaggerate. After a little bit of driving, we found a undisturbed campsite. We decided that it was good enough for us, and Daniel parked near the lake, near the campsite, open enough to see the water, backed up against the trees. We then set up the tent. After we finished setting up the tent, we began to grab our fishing rods, unloaded the canoe from the top of the car. and started heading to the lake. We then let the canoe down, started fishing on the water. Shortly after, we noticed movement out of the corner of our eyes. 4 men were already on the water in a small rowboat, fishing. We called them over, exchanged small talk about the lake, the weather, the fish. I started. "Do you come here often?" I asked. The tall one shook his head. "Not really. Mostly we stay out of sight." Everything felt normal for a moment. Then one shouted, "Get back before dark. You don't want them to get you." I frowned. "Who's them?" They laughed, dry, echoing, impossible to place. Made us feel super uneasy. Then, without a word, they rowed slowly across the lake until they disappeared toward the opposite shore. Not a word, not a look back. None of them turned their heads. Goosebumps went down me and Daniel's bodies. Daniel and I sat there, uneasy, for a couple minutes. I then broke the silence and said quietly, "Do you think we should leave?" He shook his head. "No, you're being dramatic. It's fine." We tried fishing again, but the calm had vanished. The water felt heavier, darker, like it was watching. And I remembered the ranger's rules. We hadn't followed one already, engaging with people we didn't know on the lake. We then get back to the campsite after packing up and start a fire. We do the usual, sitting by the campfire, opening up canned food, eating it, and then afterward, cooking up some of the fish we had caught. After a while, me and Daniel started to get tired, and we realized we had broken another one of the ranger's rules. We then put out the fire and slowly start to crawl into the tent with full bellies. It was quiet outside, and we started to doze off. It was almost comforting. And then we were woken up in the middle of the night to rustling outside, leaves crunching, branches snapping, slow and deliberate. Daniel whispered, "Probably just a deer," but it circled the tent, pausing at uncanny moments. Then came the laughter, high-pitched, layered, multiple voices bouncing between the trees. "Did you hear that?" Footsteps followed, multiple, running in irregular circles, fast, light, heavy, then back. A hand pressed against the tent, pale, wet, fingers spread, sliding downward, leaving faint wet marks. And then another hand appeared, and then another. Impossible angles, unnatural. We didn't respond, didn't leave. The laughter and footsteps faded slowly, leaving a silence heavier any sound. Neither of us slept again. Shortly after the interaction or the events, we started to gather ourselves, and we left the tent slowly, picking up what was necessary, getting in the Honda CRV, and then leaving to the front gate. After arriving at the ranger cabin, Daniel knocks on the ranger cabin door very loud and aggressively, saying, "Open up, this isn't funny." One of the lights inside of the cabin turn on, and the tall ranger from earlier opens the door and says, "Do you have any idea what time it is?" Obviously annoyed. Daniel then explains that it wasn't funny what they were doing at the site. The ranger had a confused look on his face and then says, "What are you talking about? It's only me here. The other rangers don't patrol at night, they go home." Daniel and I look at each other confused and explain where we had been and what site we chose. The ranger then explains that that site was undisturbed and hadn't been open for years, so we shouldn't have even been camping there. We were shocked. We then ask about the people on the lake. He says, "What people on the lake? Remember, the site is undisturbed. No one is supposed to be there." I get goosebumps down my neck after the realization. Me and Daniel look at each other, panicking. The ranger then says, "Did you follow any of my rules?" We didn't respond. We slowly walked away, got into the Honda, and moved the car into drive, and then parked on the side of the road and spent the night in the car. When morning approached, we went back to the campsite, and we were shocked at the sight of what we saw. In the dirt by the campfire, there was a goat's head, and next to it, on all the surrounding vegetation, there was blood smeared all over. And that wasn't the end of it. We check our tent after grabbing our stuff and trying to put it away, and Daniel notices a note on the tent written in paper with red marker. The note read out, "You should have played with us." My heart dropped at the sight of the note. We pack up the tent and retreat into the car. The ride back was silent. We didn't say anything, we were just shocked. Near the end of the ride back to my house, I tried to discuss with Daniel. He didn't respond. He was too in shock. A couple days after, me and Daniel were at my house, relaxing, discussing what had happened that day, the events that transpired during that trip. My dad comes downstairs. I then asked for his opinion on it, obviously being closed off earlier because we didn't want our parents to be too worried. I didn't say anything to my dad, and Daniel said nothing to his dad either. I finally asked for my dad's opinion, and he says, "Those rules are set for a reason." I show him pictures of the trip me and Daniel had taken. In the shadows, or the background of one of the pictures, we notice 5 black figures standing in the background, just watching, observing, not saying anything, just there, watching our every move. It all started to piece together for me. That night wasn't a bunch of kids just playing a joke, or the Rangers playing a joke. We were being stalked. We were being followed that whole trip. I'm just happy that me and Daniel didn't respond when we were in the tent. We didn't move, and we didn't say anything. I don't know what could have happened if we did so. I'm just happy that The predators walked away. I'm happy that me and Daniel got out of there alive. It's been years since that event transpired. I'm less stunned by it over the time, although it sits freshly in the back of my mind to this day. That trip me and Daniel wanted was supposed to be peaceful and a way to get out of the stress of life. A normal trip between two friends, but it wasn't. I just hoped that the people, if any, that camped in the area after us were as lucky as we were. We never reported the incident. We never went back to that campsite. But this event did not stop me and Daniel from camping again. We did so in the following years. Even last summer we did. But we learned to follow rules more carefully and to stay out of campsites that were not regulated. Anytime we go camping, I bet you this still sits in the back of Daniel's mind as it does mine, as a memory.